Okay, thanks everyone for coming. Just to give you a bit of a heads up on what we're going to discuss tonight, we're going to look at a few areas. Certainly the referees have discussed. We met on Monday night and went through this presentation, and the referees made some suggestions and additions as to the communication we want to have between referees and coaches, ultimately with the goal of helping everyone to improve, so the referees can facilitate the games better, the coaches understand what the referees are doing, and we can actually have a more open dialogue because it benefits the game ultimately. So first of all, just thinking about the shape of the game in Singapore and what the overarching philosophy of the referees this season will be is ultimately continuity and flow of the game. So that's what referees are going on the field trying to achieve, and certainly what the referee coaches will be looking at in terms of how well they perform. And how we're going to do that? Well, obviously fair contest for the ball, positive action by players, and then working with the on-field management by the referees. So in particular, note the working with as opposed to working against. So as said, we want to be a partnership with the teams and helping to make more attractive rugby. One of the areas that the referees did ask me to highlight on our meeting on Monday night is how we actually go about maintaining the flow of the game. And an interesting concept that's one that's quite difficult even for referees to grasp is the concept of materiality. Materiality is where it says there that an offence has no effect on the game, so the referee won't necessarily act on it. I think a big one we always hear in games is offside referee. So let's say if the player's on the left-hand side of the ruck are offside, but the scrum half goes right, well, ultimately those players haven't really had any impact on the game, so referees use that concept of materiality just to keep the flow of the game going. And ultimately we don't want to have the referee stopping the game every 30 seconds for an infringement. We want to make the game attractive. But also referees use advantage. So at times the referee has decided that the infringement has affected play, but we want the game to continue. It's something very unique to sports in that rugby does have advantage, whereas a lot of other sports don't. And again, that helps us to maintain the game flow. So just as a player and as a coach to understand that these are the kind of things that are going on inside a referee's head as he's going through the game. And so that certainly will help you as players and coaches to understand how he's facilitating it. Any questions on that? Okay, so moving on to our key focus areas for the league. Number one, always going to be the top priority for us as referees, is on the tackles. So just to go through the process that referees apply for the tackle. So number one, tackler rolls away. And we do have a little video clip here to show you, if I can bring it up. So here we see 7 red, tackler, positive action, rolling off to the side, getting out of the way. 12 red, lies there a little bit longer, doesn't make an effort to move, and so the referee signals of our advantage. So in that case, it's a good example to talk about that materiality, because the referee's communicated to him, roll away. He's put his hands out to show that he's not trying to infringe. And so it's at the referee's discretion that in Singapore, where we're not at international standard, where the referee might actually say that he's done enough to actually continue the game without penalising him. So again, something for us to think about in terms of how we coach our players and ultimately what we're trying to achieve. Second one, again, another one that I think a lot of players in Singapore aren't exactly clear about is that idea of the tackle assist. So the difference between a tackler and a tackle assist is that the tackler goes to ground with the player, the tackle assist stays on his feet. So he's brought the ball carrier to ground, but stays on his feet. And again, we've got a video just to help clarify that. So we see there, Richie, again he's brought the player to ground and we haven't seen a change in hand position, so it's very clear and obvious that he hasn't released him. Number 3, easy one, ball carrier then releases the ball. And number 4, arriving players, we want to see them supporting body weight and entering through what we call the tackle gate. So that's behind the ball and behind the players on the ground. So a quick video.
Full of stopping. Popped up by Hudson, but on the retreat, and Argentina, like terriers, into Ireland. But the follow-up by Monteros is...
So again there, nice clear picture. The Argentinian player straight off his feet, lands on his elbows, lands on his hands, and then tries to contest for the ball. So we don't want to see players just flopping in over it. As a note here, and again something we always have discussions about with the players, about that arriving defender, so that the jackler as he's called. So if he wants to gain control of the ball, what we want to see is that he can demonstrate the ability to survive a clean out. So if we have a look at this video, sorry there's no audio on this one.
That's because it's Ireland.
So if we watch 18 green, releases the player, he's in a strong body position, and we actually see that effort to lift the ball up. So as opposed to just going over the ball and staying there, we actually see a positive movement that he's trying to pull the ball up. So he really demonstrates to the referee that the player on the ground hasn't released it and he's actually trying to continue the game. Okay. Lastly, on the tackle, the new law amendment where we've actually changed the tackler's role or where he can go. So previously, if you're the tackler, you could get up the ball and play it from anywhere. Now what's being asked is that the tackler is treated as another arriving player, so we want to see him coming back around behind the ball
And through the gate.
and through the gate, yes. See there, number 13. So lands on the wrong side and then stays there just to make a nuisance of himself. So again, certainly it's something that in Singapore, where our games are slower and player skill levels aren't quite as high as international level, that's where the referees do try to use that materiality and that advantage just to try and help the game progress. So certainly when we're looking at referees' decisions as coaches, as referee coaches, we're actually looking to see how much of the game can the referee get out of it, or are they just going letter of the law, blowing every single penalty and ultimately killing off any chance of getting flow of the game. Any questions on the tackle? Happy? Okay, second one, the ruck. Again, this is a big area where there's been significant changes which will affect how we conduct rugby in Singapore. The big one being that the ruck now only needs one player. So after a tackle, if one player arrives over the ball, that is now technically a ruck. It's slightly difficult to treat it as a ruck because you're still allowed to use your hands until the other arriving player from the opposite team forms what we would traditionally call a ruck.
It can be a tackler as well, right?
So yeah, your tackler gets up and then comes back around, but obviously I think your tacklers want to try and get the ball, so as opposed to standing over, because that one arriving player now creates an offside line. So I would imagine that it'd be predominantly the attacker, the ball carrier's support player that steps over to create the offside line. If it's a defender, you would imagine he's going to go for the ball if he's there by himself, correct? Let's have a look at the video. So again, the Australian player at the bottom was forming that one-man ruck, and so all of those green players the red players we're offside. So if I can just pause it, just to give the wider picture. So we can see that the Australian player here forms that one-man ruck. As referees, whereas the offside line, we're looking at the foremost part of his foot. So we're looking from here, which means that that would run up and down the field. So again, materiality discussion, we're thinking about creating space for these players to attack into, while this player's probably maybe a few millimetres in front of the offside line. Is it material? Perhaps not. Whereas this player, maybe a metre or half a metre in front, probably has more materiality in this scenario. So again, it's something that referees will be evaluating throughout the game. But again, let's say if this was the try line we're standing on, well, millimetres make a massive difference. So that's going to change how the referee interprets the offside there. A bit confused?
No, I'm not.
Okay?
Yeah.
But again, an important point to clarify here, and what you see, the Welsh defender actually stands in front here, so he's not engaging, but he's still prepared in case this guy picks up the ball, because he is still allowed to pick up the ball,
Yeah.
which is why it's difficult for us as referees to say ruck, because ruck usually means no hands. But in this scenario, it doesn't until those two players are formed over it.
Yeah.
Okay? And then of course the next one, again, something I think will be a bit of adjustment for us in Singapore, that once the ruck is formed, you're not allowed to kick the ball forward. Something that I think disrupting tactics has been used in the past, so they've taken that away from the game. So you see here, so ruck formed, Italian players kicking the ball through.
So ball is there. You can't kick and ball together.
Okay, a clear one. Obviously with this one as well, with the safety aspect of it, if a player does try and kick the ball and makes contact with a player's head on the ground, we're looking at a red card. Okay, so a positive example of what we're looking for here.
Into that midfield. On the forward in second row. Trying to set it back. There's great counter-racking though from England.
So that kicking movement has to be backwards. So we're still allowed to play the ball backwards with the foot, just not allowed to kick it forward.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, third priority for the referees is going to be the set piece. So scrum and line out. Now in Singapore, some of the fields we play on, when the ball goes into touch, it might be 5 minutes before we retrieve it from the jungle. But certainly we as referees, we want to keep that flow of the game even when the ball's out of play. So to quote the laws on it, the scrum must be ready for the referee to call crouch within 30 seconds. And then for the line out, we are looking to approach the line of touch without delay and restart the game.
Highly dependent on the fitness of the team.
I mean, again, it's something that referees will be aware of in terms of players' fitness and the different levels that we do have in Singapore. But ultimately, if the referee does feel, wow, this has taken a really long time, then we can use this to try and help players speed it up.
I'm just thinking if it's a cross-field kick
We get the
and
door.
it's a knock-on by the fullback or the winger,
Yeah.
it's gonna take more than 30
Yeah,
seconds for
sure.
the props to get there.
Yeah, I mean, but as it says, it's there once the referee makes the mark for the scrum. So depending on the referee, it might take him 30 seconds to get over there as well. But certainly in the Premiership, where we do want to be playing our top level of rugby, we are looking for things to get started a little bit faster. Okay. On further on scrums, now obviously skill levels when it comes to front rows and scrummaging has been highly varied throughout the league, and so our priorities at the scrum are quite minimal to take into account the different skill levels. But one thing I think we all can agree on is to get that stability before the ball comes in. So again, this is something we've discussed with the referee team at our briefing, and what we wanted to share with the coaches. So I'll give you, we've got two examples here. We've got a poor example and a good one.
Most of that following. Stay down. People are stepping on the boots.
So on that one, I think a very clear picture about too much movement in the front rows, and then the ball coming in after. So a better example.
For the Crusaders, for the brother of Mandalo, cousin of Tavita Kiratani, cousin of Moti Tukiri.
So you can see we do have that movement, and then we get the settle, so that's when the ball can come in. So I think it's a pretty reasonable expectation for our front rows, in that we can actually get that brief few seconds of stability, so we can get the ball in, and then the teams get the shove on. I've been very clear with our referees, is that if we're not getting that at the early part of the league and the early part of the games, that referees are within rights to give a free kick, and we just get on with the game. So again, just buying into that priority for referees of game flow, continuity, rather than having 5 or 6 goes at a scrum which is being reset and reset over and over again.
And the scrum, the free kick will go against. It's kind of hard to tell who's not.
Yeah. So it'll go against the team that's not given stability. Okay.
I just find that it's a bit hard to tell which side is actually causing the instability, right?
And I mean, again, that's the discretion of the referee, and as mentioned, the referees are doing a scrum clinic tomorrow night, and I'm sure that will be a hot topic and what will be discussed at length. So I mean, again, it's something that we can have in conversations with the referees. Certainly the referees are open to hearing from players at the right time as to what actually has been going on in the games, but ultimately it's at the referee's discretion to decide who is not giving that stability.
Okay. How about teams that stop pushing? Do they get penalized? Or?
That stop pushing?
So like on engage, you just lean, and then they don't really put any weight.
Sure.
So do they get penalized?
I mean, again, it's something that teams need to work together with. I mean, it's something that the players should be deciding, is how much weight do I need to give on the set at the scrum, and it's something that the referee will manage between the two teams. So ultimately it's the players that make the decisions as to how much weight they put on it. So, and that's where we want to leave it, that the players decide the outcome of that. Okay.
And what would be what's the call for it?
What's the call for?
Yeah, like for instability. Like how do you penalize?
So free kick. Okay. So starting at a free kick, if it continues to be problems, then we look at penalties, then we look at yellow cards. I have seen instances in the past where both front rows don't want to engage, so both front rows get yellow carded. Okay. So again, it's something that.
So they have to engage.
I mean, they're not pushing early. Is the wording in the law? So we're not pushing early. Okay. But it is the responsibility of both teams to keep the scrum on the mark.
No.
Okay. Question?
Sorry. You have the Keith?
Yeah. Sorry.
So just on that, the stability and the speed of the scrum, are we new law in the fact that if I'm putting the ball in, I don't have to be standing right in the middle. I can have my shoulder length to my team as long as the ball.
Yeah, we'll come on to the amendments on the scrum after, but yes, you're right. Well, I do have a slide on that as well.
Okay, sorry.
No problem.
Sorry.
Okay, so scrum, I mean, again, it's something that it's on the teams to do this. It's not the referee's job to make the scrum steady. It's the team's job to make the scrum steady. Referees are there to assist them, but ultimately if we can get both teams buying into giving a stable scrum and then make it a legitimate pushing contest, it's better for the teams as well. Lineouts, again, the setup is probably the important thing for us as referees. So just making sure that we get the 1 metre gap between the opposition. A lot of teams love to complain that the ball's not being thrown in straight. Makes it easier for referees to see if we do have a clear gap between the two lines. 2 single straight lines, again, ball's not coming in straight and your line's perfectly in a straight line. It's going to make it much easier to see those. Our non-throwing hooker on the defensive side, receiver, and then all other players 10 metres away. Now we discussed with the referee group about the huddle, where a lot of teams like to have their little strategy discussion before the line-out starts. And if we refer back to the speed of setup, what we would advise teams to do is that we're having our huddles in this area, so we're clearly away from the line-out, and once we approach the line-out, then we're going. So we're indicating to the referee we're approaching the line-out to get the ball in. Okay? And again, pre-game.
So when they approach the line, we assume their numbers has been decided.
So that gives from here to here for the opposition to say, oh, they're putting in a full line out or they're putting in a 5-man line out. So again, it just helps you guys manage the game and manage the players that you're putting in. Obviously, it goes well if the pack leader is calling out the numbers to help facilitate the game. There's no directive to say that you must call out numbers. But again, if we're having that huddle here and then putting in 3 players, the referee has to give the opposition time to adjust, and so it slows the game down. So again, we do recognise that we have our talks. Let's have them here and move in. But again, let's not be over dramatic in making that a 2-minute or a 3-minute discussion before we come in. Okay? So then, just to tap on to what you said, the law amendments on the scrum. So a big change, we're not doing yes 9 or tap from the referee. Once the scrum is stable, then the ball comes in, and again that buys into what we were just discussing about the stability. So the scrum half still has to wait for the scrum to be stable before he puts the ball in. But then, as you said, we want him to throw it in straight, but he can't align his shoulders with his prop. So what World Rugby here is saying that everyone's had lots of debate about the crooked feeds and allowing crooked feeds. So they're saying, okay, we'll let you move closer to your side, but put the ball in straight now. So a quick video on that.
Sorry.
5, set. Stay close, 9. That's very bad.
Okay.
So what happens if the scrum half feels that the scrum is not stable?
Well, what do you think?
But
I think
sometimes
I mean,
the scrum move and then the ref just penalise immediately without like giving a warning to ask the scrum half.
so again, I think we've explained the picture of stability pretty clearly there.
Mm-hmm.
So scrum halves will be able to see that that's the picture we're looking for. If we're not getting that picture, then that's where referees step in. Okay.
So the ref can still provide a directive if the halfback's waiting for it to.
Sure. I mean, again, given the skill levels and the mismatches in front rows, the referees still do have that ability to say, hold, let's wait for it. Or as you could see in the video where Jakob Paper actually stayed in the tunnel and didn't let the scrum half come in until it's there. So we do. I mean, again, it's something we can work on together about referees and the scrum half actually supporting each other to achieve that goal.
So the referees will still like ask the scrum half to feed first before he penalise the scrum half?
I mean, if we're getting stability and we can facilitate that, then the referee will step back away and let the scrum half manage it. If there's problems, then that's when referees are more likely to be hands-on in terms of managing the stability. Other amendments. Firstly, they said that the scrum half can move towards his side, put it in straight. What we want to see now is a hook for the ball. So we're looking for someone in the front row to hook for it.
Está pasando en el caso de las dos defensas lo mismo. Los ataques están teniendo facilidades para agrupar gente y encontrar espacio por afuera. Quizá el que dé un paso al frente en la.
So again, somehow I can't imagine that this season we're going to have a scrum just sit nice and square for 5 or 10 seconds, but if we do, that's how we restart the game. It's been brought in effectively just to keep that game flow. We had so many games last year in the Super Rugby competition where the ball just sat in the middle and the referee had no means to actually stop the game because it wasn't in the law. As well, number 8 now can pick the ball up from the second row. And then finally, I think something might be an impact for us on uncontested scrums. So if we've had a yellow card or a temporary suspension or an injury, and that forces us to go uncontested, we have to have 8 players in the scrum. So what it means is we're taking away the contest at the scrum, but if a team has been penalised, then they still have to match numbers in the scrum itself.
Match the attacking side, right? So they can still choose to play 7, right?
No, so both teams will have to have 8 in the scrum.
Can the 8 take it off the back if it's uncontested?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, it's only for uncontested.
Yeah, this is just for uncontested scrums. Any questions? We can see the video if you want. Would you like to see the video?
Yeah.
So number 8 picking up.
I should have waited for the video would have answered the question.
And then uncontested.
Crouch, bind, set. Okay, play. Yeah, wait. Stay down, stay 7. Good.
Okay.
And if it's contested, do they
Then
have
we
to
just
match?
play
Just
unless
play.
it's under 19 laws.
Okay.
Okay, next one. Now, I made this slide up myself and tried to make it as clear as possible because it's quite a tricky one to explain. Even with the referees, it was a tricky one. But again, looking at whether the ball's in or out now. So in these pictures, the ball has been kicked by the opposition close to the touchline. So touch in the field of play. So the player catches the ball with 1 foot in and 1 foot out, but the ball has already crossed the plane of touch before it's caught. So the ball's out and the black team get the restart. The difference now is same scenario, player 1 foot in, 1 foot out, but this time the ball has not crossed the plane of touch. Black players caught it, black has now taken it out. So the principle behind this is that by right the ball would be landing here, and if this guy was a step in, we'd be able to play on. So in the past where we've seen players buy the line out by extending their leg and catching it to stop the game, World Rugby's now saying if the ball's going to land in, let's play it. If it's going out, then we'll have the line out. Okay? And then again with the third picture, nothing's really changed there. So the ball's crossed the plane of touch but hasn't made contact with anything on the line of touch or beyond. So it's just play on. And then with the top corner, this applies also to the 22-metre line, the try line and the dead ball line. So again, if this was the try line and he picks up the ball from here and goes into the in goal, he's taking it back, so it would be a 5-metre scrum as opposed to the 22 restart.
Without sounding awkward, 2 feet in touch, reach in and catch the ball.
Same principle. So again, it's now where the ball is as opposed to where the player is. So if it's touched before here, then he's taken it out. Okay. I wasn't able to pick a clearer picture, but another amendment: if the player jumps from the field of play, is in the air, catches the ball, even though it's past here, and throws it back in before he lands, it's now play on. Whereas that used to be he would have to land in the field of play. So we've changed that again. Just something, I think it's a positive move to just continue the game. Obviously not taking into account whether he throws it forward as he bats it in, but certainly he won't be called to be in touch. Okay, couple of other amendments just to go through very quickly. Again, something that was up for debate in the past because it was a Super Rugby rule, but now if time is up on the referee's watch and your team is awarded a penalty, you do have the option to kick for the line out. If you don't want to kick for the line out, tap the ball first and then kick it out. Okay? Multiple penalties, you now have the option if you've been given a penalty for a high tackle followed by another penalty for a high tackle, you've got the option to choose where you want the penalty from. Certainly if you want that, I would advise your captain to ask the referee, can I have the option in terms of where you want the penalty. And then last one, very simple one, penalty try is now 7 points with no conversion. Okay. Lastly, moving on to the last couple, foul play. Nothing's really changed here. We still have a high priority on our dangerous or reckless tackles, our neck rolls, and anything else that's deemed as foul play. And we've got Joy here. If Joy wants to mention about concussion, we as referees did a seminar a few weeks ago on how the medics and the referees will be working more closely together on concussion. But ultimately, if the referee decides that a player's got a suspected concussion, there's no debate, no argument on it. They have to sit out for the rest of the day. Joy, anything to add?
I think they have to sit out until they've actually gone through a concussion process. It's very difficult because the referee's view is quite often different from the pitch side view, and the referee may well see something that you can't see from pitch side. So it's got to be about good communication processes. But ultimately, you're going to be encouraging everyone to talk together before a match to agree, that that's going on. But ultimately, if there is dissension about it, the referee has the final say. But just asking really that you buy into best practice for concussion management, i.e., could you educate your players, can you educate everyone about recognise and remove process? All right.
Okay.
Minimum time to go back to play after you've had a concussion?
21 days, 24 if you're under
Maybe you managed 20 days. Depends how quickly they're asymptomatic. Yeah. But there are very few ways of shortening that process in the domestic league.
Is there, because we've done this in New Zealand, we trialled a blue card scenario, which is similar to this.
Yeah, New Zealand have adopted it now.
Yeah.
We're starting on that process at the moment, so if the referees are recording it, we'll get the data on it. But it's also very much the team's responsibility to make sure that once somebody has said that there's a concussion, that the players actually take the time out and they recover and they do a proper graduated return to play, which is documented.
Cool.
That's all on the website, the forms and things for doing that.
No worries.
Okay, almost done. Again, something where we were hoping to get coaches in and have a chat about. Certainly something that's needed to step up in Singapore is communicating with referees. Certainly from what I've talked to referees about is that we don't want to shut the door in communicating with coaches and with captains, but we will ask for the principle of right time, right tone. So right time being during a long stoppage, not when we're packing down a scrum or if the other team's trying to quick tap or kick for the corner. And the right tone is talk with us, not talk at us. So certainly positive conversations I've had with captains is, can you explain to me where we're going wrong with the tackle, or how do we fix this, or how do you see this, as opposed to, ref, you're effing useless. Any questions on that? With that, this has been brought up with the managers meeting, but certainly something worth reminding coaches is that we do have a process in place this year for dealing with any abuse from the sidelines directed to MDCs, medics or referees. The MDCs have done a workshop on this, the referees are aware of this. So again, hopefully we don't have to resort to this, but just to be aware that this is the process we'll be following. Next one, again, something certainly from my end in terms of communicating negatively with referees. Standing on the sidelines screaming and shouting at a referee is not going to change anything. If you can communicate with me, drop me an email, send me a copy of the game video and address it with me, then I can make a change. So if there is an issue with a referee, having that information, I can deal with it and make changes, whether it be to push for another referee to come in at a certain level and recognise that that referee might not be at this level or not. But again, that's something where we can have that discussion, or I can go back and say, actually the referee's right because X, Y and Z. So again, it's not saying that we don't want to hear from you, it's saying let's do it in a professional manner. Lastly, foul play. Just to be aware, we've mentioned this also with the team managers, that representatives from clubs do have the right to report on incidents of foul play that have gone pardon me, untreated by the referee. Please note that it's only for red card offences. So if you're not happy that a player hasn't been picked up for not rolling away, that wouldn't result in a red card if the referee had seen it. So, but whereas if it is something where it's extremely dangerous, let's say we've seen somebody be kicked in the head that the referee hasn't seen, definitely those are the kind of reports we want to hear about. As mentioned, all the information on the process is on the SRU website. So just on, if you go to the main site, down to competition documents, National League, and in there the whole process of how citing works and how disciplinary works is there. But I think the key evidence here, the key part here is that we need video evidence of it, otherwise it becomes a he said, she said, and it needs to come in within 48 hours of the game. Then that will be sent to the citing committee and they'll decide from there whether there's sufficient evidence to proceed with dealing with a player through judiciary or whether it's not sufficient. Okay, tried to keep it as minimalist as possible. So finally, any other questions that we have or anything we'd like to talk about in terms of referees for the league this year? Stunned silence.
I've got a question I kind of asked. You were obviously at the Sevens tournament at St Andrews,
Okay.
the same as I was, and there was a couple of yellow cards, not with my team or anything, but just the notion of the tackle, which I always thought playing on grass fields was a fine tackle, but just what is the standpoint of referees now if a good tackle's been made, there's a minimal amount of lift and the person comes down heavily on, say, their shoulders and maybe close to their neck, but they haven't been tipped the horizontal.
I mean, part of it is the tip beyond the horizontal, but also it does state in the law that a player who's lifted off the ground must be returned safely back to the ground. So it's a case of when you lift a player up, you do run that risk if you don't bring him down to the ground safely of being dealt with harshly.
Okay.
I mean, again, there's fine lines between whether it's above the horizontal or not, and on TV we've the luck of having TMOs and instant replays where we can review it and review it again. Referees in Singapore certainly have to make a split-second decision on this, and given the impact on player safety, certainly with schoolboy rugby, they are going to look more harshly at it. On men's rugby, I think probably the similar approach of once a player is lifted, we want to see them brought to ground safely.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. No, it does. It's one of those areas where what looks to be a good tackle and they land on their back,
Yeah.
is up to interpretation.
Sure.
It's just making sure that my players, my women's team players, are aware of that as well, because they're bigger European women.
Yeah.
So that's something that could easily happen without them thinking
Yeah.
about it.
And again, I think that's the reasoning behind it, is because players sometimes don't recognise their own strength or their own limitations, and so it's just making sure that we're aware of it and that we're trying to to not injure an opposition intentionally. Yeah. We also did a training video for the referees on process on high tackles or dangerous tackles. I'm happy to put that on the WhatsApp to team managers as well if you want to have a look at it. Again, I think picture-wise it paints a clearer picture of where referees are looking at in terms of how they deal with it. But again, I mean, ultimately the referees here, we're human beings as well. We make mistakes too. But certainly from my perspective as the referee manager, it's let's have that conversation about a referee's performance so we can actually make it better, as opposed to just venting on the sidelines, because let's face it, it's not going to change anything.
No, of course.
Okay? Well, thanks everybody for coming down. Really appreciate you making the effort.
Sorry, I was late.
No, it's all right. It could be worse. We can stop the video now.
Sorry, I can't help.